Hi, today we're going to be creating this Afro Girl illustration in Illustrator. Over the course of this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to get the hair, the texture and all by simply applying and tweaking a couple of effects to get the desired results. I'll also be showing you a really nifty trick to use the transform tool as a live mirroring tool in Illustrator. That way we get to work on only one side of our face, as the other side gets automatically generated symmetrically. So let's get started. I'll click on File, New. Select the web option, and under the name I'll just type in Afro Girl. Set the width to 1080 and the height to 1350. I chose those specific dimensions because I want to take up as much space as possible when uploading to Instagram for the sake of visibility. Now I have a blank page. The first thing we want to do is apply our background. So I'm going to click on the rectangle tool, and right here where it says intersect with the smart guide, if you don't see that on your workspace, just go to view and ensure smart guides is checked. So I'm going to click right here and drag diagonally across the page to draw my rectangle. Set the stroke to none and the fill color to yellow. Now we need to lock this shape. I'm just going to press Ctrl 2 on the keyboard. If you went to the layers panel and extend that, you see there's a lock icon already there. To unlock it, simply click on it and you have a shape back there. But I'm going to lock it and we'll keep working. So we have to draw the hair. The first thing we're going to do is establish the colors we will need for the hair. So I'm just going to choose any shape that can contain the colors we require. In this case, I'm using the rectangle tool, and I'll just hold Shift and drag to draw a square. With the selection tool activated, I'll hold the Alt key and drag again to duplicate. This time we have two squares. I'll apply the first color, which is going to contain the shadows for the hair, and under the hexadecimal field there, I'm going to type in 0D0000. That will give us a really deep red or brown. For the second color, I'm also going to double click there and set that to 5D5555. That gives us a reddish gray, rather gray with a really small tinge of red. With our two color samples in place, we can begin drawing the hair. Right click on the rectangle tool and select the star tool. Click anywhere within the canvas and set the first radius to 100 pixels, second radius to 200 pixels, set the points to 32 and click OK. I'm just going to drag across the page to center that till I snap right there. Under the properties panel, I'll set the width, but ensure you have maintain height and width proportions activated, and set the width and height to 700 pixels. I'll just drag this down here. Now we need to apply these two colors as a gradient. To do that, I'm just going to click on the gradient icon down there with the shape selected, and we get our gradient panel over here. Under the type, set that to radial, reverse gradient. Click on the first slider and set the location to 85%. Now to apply these two colors, one way you could do it is double click on the slider and begin trying to set up the mode and apply the colors manually, but we want to save time. So I'll click on this slider here, select the eyedropper tool, hold Shift and click on the shape with the color we want, and right away it adopts the color. I'm also going to do the same for the second slider. Hold Shift and click. Now it doesn't seem like there's much going on with the gradient, but it's going to show up later on. The next thing I'm going to do is select the direct selection tool, zoom in and drag on any one of these corner widgets. If you don't see them on your screen, click on the view menu and show corner widgets. Presently it's set to hide corner widget because I already have my widget active. So just click on any one of these round widgets and drag downwards to somewhere around the ballpark of 5 pixels and release. Notice our width and height have been tampered again because of that operation, so we'll update that to 700 pixels again and duplicate this star. I'm going to press Ctrl C on my keyboard, Ctrl F to paste in front. You can also access that under the edit menu. Copy, paste in front. Now we have two shapes in exactly the same position. For the first shape, under the width and height, set that to 50 pixels. Now we'll drag across to select both shapes. Click on the object menu, blend options, set the spacing mode to specified steps, 100, click OK. Now we need to apply that blend. Go back again to Objects, Blend, Make. Now I'll have a blended group. Time to apply the effects that will give us the hair texture we want. So I'm going to click on the effect menu, Distort and Transform. We're going to be using this option quite a lot in this tutorial. The first effect I want to apply is Pucker and Bloat. Select that and set it to -10%. We'll also apply another effect, Zigzag. Set the size to 5 pixels, absolute, reduce per segment 2, smooth points, and click OK. Doesn't look much like the hair we want, but we'll apply one more effect, Roughen. Set the size to 12%, relative, 0 details, smooth points, and click OK. And there we have our hair texture. Now, here's the best thing about these effects, and that is that they are non-destructive. If you just went over to the Appearance panel, to get that, go to Window, Appearance. We have a list of all the effects as we have applied them in the right order. Remember, we applied Blend, then Pucker and Bloat, Zigzag, and Roughen. Now, these effects here can easily be hidden or readjusted. It also matters the order in which you apply these effects. If I applied Zigzag before Pucker and Bloat, we'll get different results. Well, we want Pucker and Bloat before Zigzag, so that gives us a whole range of possibilities with these effects. You could also delete any one of these effects if you want, but I'm satisfied with this. Now, one last thing we're going to do. I find that this origin point here is quite distracting, especially when we begin drawing the head. We don't want that dark dot showing up there. It's going to be a distraction, so we want to pull it down where it's going to be hidden behind the shape of our head and our face later on. To do that, we're going to click on the blend group, right click and isolate selected group, or you could just click on it and then double click to get into the isolation mode. Here we are right inside the group itself, so we get to work on the individual shapes that make up the group without the distraction of other shapes which are outside the group. So I'm just going to click and drag while holding the shift key to constrain until I get to that point. That's low enough. So when we get to draw the head, the point there is hidden behind the shape of the head. I'm going to double click out of the isolation mode, and there we have the shape of the hair as we require. Now that we're done creating the hair, we can proceed to draw the face. But before then, I'm just going to have to center this hair object. I find that there's more space on the right side than we have on the left. So I'll go to Window, Align to open the Align panel and simply ensure that it's set to align to artboard. Select the object and align horizontally. Good. The next thing I'm going to need to do is establish the color of the skin, as we'll need to use it across the illustration. So just like before, I'll duplicate this shape right there and set the fill color. I'm just going to type this in here for you, C99F66. Next, I'm going to create a new layer and I'll name it face. Before we continue, I'm going to explain a few things about how layers work in Illustrator. Layers are like folders within which objects are stored. There's nothing you will find on the artboard that isn't stored in a layer. By default, every document opens with a layer, as we have here layer 1. And we can go on to create other layers for organizational purposes. Now, as we already know, whenever we draw an object on the canvas, it's stored in a layer, and that object is made up of a few appearance properties by default. As we see here in the appearance panel, it's made up of a path, a stroke, a fill color, and opacity. If I get rid of a fill, for example, this is what we're left with: the path. The stroke is invisible currently because it's set to none, but it's still there. But what you may not know is that appearance properties and effects can also be applied to the containing layer or the parent layer. And whenever those appearance properties are applied, they go on to affect every other object within the layer, much like an inheritance. But unlike the objects, you can't just click to access the appearance properties of the layer. You have to go up here and target the appearance of that specific layer, because the layer is just a container. It has no physical representation on the artboard. So right now I have the face layer targeted, and whatever effects I apply will affect the content of that layer. I'm just going to apply the roughen effect here quickly, and notice what happens to the triangle that is stored within the face layer. Every other shape I draw will also inherit the same effects because it is stored in the parent layer. Currently, as you can see from the icon, it's also filled, letting us know there is an effect. But if I drag this out, the effect goes away because there's nothing to inherit there. Now that that's clear, I'm just going to delete the effect and delete the object right here. We will be needing the layer. Now that that's clear, we can go on to begin drawing the head. Here's the thing about the face we're going to draw: it has to be symmetrical. Now, naturally, if we're going to stick with realism, the human face isn't exactly perfectly symmetrical in the real world, but here we're making an illustration loosely based on reality, so we are allowed a few freedoms, and here I'm going to make sure it's symmetrical, which means we can work on just one side of our face while the left side can be a mirror image of the right. To do that, we'll take advantage of the mirroring effect, and I'll show you how to do that. By default, Illustrator doesn't exactly come with an express feature for mirroring, but I expect it should be available in future versions. But in the meantime, we're going to have to work our way around to get the same effect. So the first thing I'm going to do is click to target the appearance properties of the face layer. Then I'll go to Effect, Distort and Transform. I'll set it to reflect on the X-axis and set the number of copies to 1 and click OK. Now, nothing seems to be happening because all we have here is just the layer, no objects. So the next thing I'm going to draw is a rectangle across the artboard. That rectangle is going to serve as our bounding box. So everything we're going to do will have to be within this box, and I'm making it the same size with the artboard because we won't be needing to go outside the artboard anyway. I'll get rid of the fill, we won't be needing that, and then I'll lock the rectangle. Now I'll just show you what's going on before I continue. If I draw a shape right here, notice we have a mirror right on the left side. I duplicate that shape and we get a mirror as well. So everything else we're going to draw within the face layer will get mirrored on the left side. So we're going to have to add a guideline in the middle right there so we know exactly where the reflections begin. I'm going to press Ctrl R on the keyboard to reveal the rulers. Then I'll just click and drag out a guideline. Now I want that line centered, but right now I have no guides to center it perfectly, so I'm just going to drag it anywhere on the artboard and center it manually. The first thing I need to do is unlock the guide, because presently it's not selectable. So I'll have to go to View, Guides, Unlock Guides. Now I can drag it along. Then I'll go to the Align panel and align it horizontally. Now that that's done, we'll go back to View, Guides, Lock Guides. I'm just going to drag this guide up here to avoid any complications. Now we can begin working. The first thing I'm going to need to do is draw an ellipse. We want to get the shape of the head, and I want to start by drawing simple shapes from which we'll build up our main shapes. So we're going to be working just on the right side of the screen. The left will get reflected. So I'll draw an ellipse right here and just size it to somewhere around 350 pixels. And then we'll adopt the skin color. Now notice we have two ellipses right now. Well, we want just one ellipse. The only way to achieve that is to halve this one. So two halves will make a whole. So I'll use the direct selection tool to select this anchor point right there and delete. Then I'll drag this and snap it to the line. If you encounter problems snapping the line perfectly, you should go to View and ensure Snap to Pixel is turned off. Now we can snap our shapes without any interference. I'm just going to drag this up here, somewhere close to the base of the hair shape. Then I'm going to have to hide the hair layer so it doesn't interfere with our work. The next shape I'm going to draw is a triangle. This will serve as the jawbone and the chin. So I'll just click anywhere within the next thing I'm going to draw is a triangle that will serve as the chin and the jawbone. So I'll come over here and select the polygon tool. Just click anywhere within the canvas and ensure the number of sides is set to 3 and click OK. Use the selection tool to resize the triangle and rotate. I'm holding the Shift key as I rotate to constrain. Now, just like the ellipse, we're going to have to halve this triangle. To do that, I'll use the pen tool to add an anchor point right there in the middle where it intersects. Then I'll go to the direct selection tool and select this anchor point right there. Then I'll use the direct selection tool to select this anchor point and delete. Now we have half a triangle as well. So I'm going to drag this and snap it to the middle of the semicircle and also to the guideline. I'm going to resize the triangle to align to the side of the circle. I also resize it here vertically to somewhere around half of the circle. Then I'll add an anchor point by using the pen tool. Ensure the triangle is selected and just click to add an anchor point. Now we're going to begin working with these 3 anchor points. Now for this one, we'll go to the Properties panel. If you use an older version of Illustrator, that should be somewhere up here, and convert the anchor point to smooth. Then I'll select the handle and just rotate it horizontally. I'll do the same for the next anchor point as well. convert it to smooth. And this time I'll rotate it vertically. You can hold the shift key to snap. And I'll just drag this out. I'll select the third anchor point and do the same, convert it to smooth. But this time I'll use the pen tool and I'll hold the Alt key to break the handle and snap it right there till it's perfectly horizontal. When you hold the Control key, it temporarily switches to the direct selection tool, so we're able to work with the pen tool and the direct selection tool quickly. So I'll select that and also hold the Alt key and adjust the second handle. I'm holding Shift now to constrain vertically as I drag. And notice we're beginning to get the shape of the face. We'll have to tweak a few handles till we get what we want. So I'm just going to pull this up a bit as well and pull it out again. And so far it's beginning to come out nice. As we keep working, we may come back to tweak the shape of the face, but right now I think we're well on our way to getting a really good base. I'm just going to place the hair behind there. I think I'm going to have to reduce the size of the overall shape a bit. And this is perfect for the shape of the head, so we can begin working off of this base. Now that we've established the base of the face, we can go on to fill in the facial features. And I'm just going to begin with the eyes. So ensure that the face layer is selected, then take the ellipse tool and draw. I'll get rid of the stroke here. Then set the color to a really light gray. That should work. I'll set the size of the eyeballs to somewhere around, 65 is fine. And then I'll position it using this semicircle as a guide, somewhere around there. The eyes being at the halfway point of the head, so somewhere around here should be fine. And then horizontally, we want to position it so there's just enough space in between to fit in a third eye, so that's fine right there. The next thing I'm going to do is break this anchor point. So I'll select the pen tool, hold the Alt key and click to convert that anchor point to a corner, and I'll just click and pull it out like that. I'll also adjust these handles. Right there. The next thing I'm going to draw is the iris. So I'll take the ellipse tool again and draw another circle. Then I'll begin by coloring it with the skin color, then using the color guide to select a darker shade. Somewhere around that should be fine. I'll also duplicate this by pressing Ctrl C and then paste in place, Ctrl F. I'll reduce that. So this would form the pupil. And I'll select a much darker shade as well for the color of the pupil. I'll also increase the size a bit because we're going to have to add eyelids next. I'll just group these two. Now time to draw the eyelids. I'll take the pen tool and right there where it shows anchor, I'll click there to begin drawing the path. I'll draw it one above like that. Adjust it and keep drawing anchor it to that point again, then draw the rest of the eyelid. I'll set it to the skin color with the eyedropper tool, then adjust the shape using the direct selection tool. This is fine. I'll pull this up a bit. Next thing I'm going to draw is the eyelashes. So I'll take the pen tool again, and this time we want the eyelashes to follow the line, exactly the line of the eyelids. So to do that, I'll use the direct selection tool. I'll switch to the direct selection tool by pressing the Control key to switch temporarily. Then I'll select that anchor point and copy, Ctrl C and Ctrl V to paste. And I'll drag it and position it right there. Right now all we have is a path, so that's why you see the color there, but we're going to continue that path with the pen tool. So I'll click on this anchor point there to continue the path. And I'll draw the shape of the eyelashes. Place an anchor point there, and then hold Alt and click to convert that point to a corner. Then I'll keep tweaking the shape of the eyelashes. I'll also change the color to a really deep brown, maybe same as the iris there, or the pupil. Okay, now that we're done with that, I'm just going to hide the hair for now. It's kind of distracting, so we can focus on the face. Now that we're done with that, time to draw the eyebrows. I'm also going to keep it simple by using a path. So I'll take the pen tool, and right about there I'll click and drag to draw the eyebrows. Ensure the path is in the face layer. I'll convert it to path right there. Then under the stroke properties, set the stroke width to somewhere around 8 is fine. Then we'll adjust the stroke cap to the rounded one, and the profile, I'll choose this one here. I think I'll just increase the size of the stroke to 10, then adjust it. The next thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of a fold right under the eyebrows to show where the eyelids kind of begin. So I'll take the pen tool again and just draw a simple line. I'll set the color to the skin color by using the eyedropper tool and shift clicking on the skin. And I'll use the color guide to choose a darker shade for the fold. Then under the strokes, I'll set the profile to this one, the width profile 1 right there, and it just adds a little touch of something. Then for the eyes, I'm going to have to add highlights. It helps with the realism, just another little detail to make it stand out. So I'll take the ellipse tool again and draw, and I'll set it to the color of the eyeballs using the eyedropper tool and clicking. So we'll have that sheen right there. I'll just push it outwards a bit. If you notice, it's being mirrored right here, and it seems like there is a light coming from the right and another light from the left, and it's just not that realistic. So what I'm going to do is take this highlight and take it up to the next layer where we don't have that mirroring effect, and I'll just duplicate it manually and place it somewhere here, so it looks more like the light is coming from the same direction and hitting our eyes. And we're almost there. There's something about adding eyes to an illustration like this that makes it come alive. The next thing we're going to do is draw the nose. So just like before, we'll also use simple parts. There's no need to complicate it further. So I'll click somewhere around here and draw. I'll keep modifying the path and adjusting till we get the results we want. I choose the skin color, then use the color guides to choose a deeper shade. Then I'll adjust the stroke properties. I'm using this profile and set the width to 3 pixels. I'm also going to draw in the nostrils. So just like before, I'll take the pen tool again and use a stroke. And this time I'm going to be using this profile. And as you can see, there's so much we can do just by using strokes and width profiles. Finally, I'll draw in the shape of the nose or the nostrils. I'll just change the profile here and reduce the weight. So all that's left is to tweak this line till we get something that works. Okay, now I know what's wrong here. This stroke is in another layer, so I'll just drop it right here for it to mirror. I'm just going to reduce the size of this stroke. Then I'll push these ones a bit closer. And that seems nice. Seems good enough. Now notice I'm just using these lines to infer the shape of her nose, and our brain just does the rest of the work, and we know that's the shape of the nose. So the next thing I'm going to add in are the lips. To do that, we'll use another simple shape. I'll just use the polygon to click anywhere within the artboard and set the number of size to 3, then click OK. Then I'll rotate the triangle. I also need to set the color of her lips. So I'll double click here and set it to a shade of red. That should work. 602929. So we'll begin tweaking this triangle shape till we get something that works. As usual, I'm going to have to break the path right here, so I'll use the pen tool, click right there and delete. And I'll snap it to the guideline. So far the position is good. We'll just need to add in a few more shapes. So I'll add in another triangle, or what I'm just going to do is duplicate this triangle, Ctrl C and Ctrl F to paste in place. Then I'll adjust the size by holding the Alt key and dragging, so I have something right in the middle there. Then I'll use the color guide panel to choose a deeper shade. Now we need to soften the lips, so I'll use the direct selection tool to click right there, or rather the pen tool, then convert that point to a smooth point and begin manipulating it. I'm going to add another anchor point right here to help the manipulations of the shape. So now I have greater control as to the shape of the lips, especially the upper lip right here. I'll do the same here, convert it to smooth, then rotate. And I'll pull this down. The lower lips should be a bit larger than the upper lip. I'll just bring this in a bit and round out this portion just a little. And so far it's coming out nice. The next thing I want to add is just a little touch. Just like we added the highlights to the eyes, I'll add a bit of highlight to the lips as well. So I'll use the ellipse tool, just draw right here, set the color to white, then I'll manipulate this ellipse. I'll change the, under the appearance panel, I'll change the opacity to something about 20 or 15%. 15% is fine. And just adds a little touch of realism to it. I'll duplicate it and add something like that as well to the upper lip. And I'll place it somewhere here. And right away we're getting somewhere. Now here's how it looks so far with the hair. The next thing we're going to add is something for the head, so it could serve as a scarf or like a bandana over the head. So to do that, I'm going to begin drawing it by copying this path right here. So I'll select the anchor point, then copy and paste. I want the color of the bandana to match her lips, so I'll set the color using the eyedropper tool to the color of her lips, and I'll place it right there. Using the pen tool, I'll continue the path and end it there. The next thing I'm going to add are folds for our bandana. So this time we'll just use the pen tool and some paths with a width profile. So I'll click here and draw. And I'll use the color guide tool to select a deeper shade, then increase the width of the stroke and change the profile. The next thing I'm going to do is move this fold upwards to the next layer. We don't need it mirroring. And I'm going to flip the stroke using the transform tool. Reflect, vertical, copy. I'll draw another stroke here. And we'll apply the same stroke properties. I find that there's a bit of an extra line out there. I don't know if it's visible to you, but because of that, I'm just going to pull this anchor point up here, just to cover that. And so far so good. This is beginning to look great. I'm going to pull this shape downwards a bit more. Now if you zoom in closely, you'll notice there's a tiny line of separation between the mirror object, but we'll fix that when we eventually expand and merge them together. So the next thing we're going to need to do is draw the neck and the upper torso. Now we'll go on to draw the neck and the upper torso. But first I'm going to begin by adding a new layer. This will contain the neck. So I'll call it neck. And I'll add another layer just above the neck layer and I'll call it upper torso. Then I'll select the neck layer, take the rectangle tool and just draw a rectangle of about that size. I'll set it to the skin color using the eyedropper tool and get rid of the stroke. Of course, it's gone. And I'll use the align panel to align it horizontally on the artboard and push this upwards. Presently it's the same as the skin color, so I'll go to the color guide panel and take it a shade down. Now to draw the upper torso, we're going to give it the same treatment as the face, so we get to work on just one side. So I'm going to apply that mirror effect. With the upper torso layer selected, I'll take a rectangle and just draw to mark the boundary. So we're going to work within this area. This is fine. Somewhere about here is fine because we're not going upwards. Then I'll get rid of the fill and select the upper torso appearance properties. Then I'll go to effect, distort and transform. I'll set it to reflect on the x-axis and number of copies to 1 and click OK. And I'll lock the rectangle layer. Next thing I'm going to do is begin drawing the upper torso. So I'll just draw here. I'm going to have to bring back my guideline, so I'll go to View, Guides, Show Guides. Then I'll color her shirt because I'm just going to type in the color right here for you, 26202A, and this is what we get. Then I'll begin adjusting and manipulating the shape of the upper torso. or the upper body. I'm going to use the pen tool to add one anchor point right here where it intersects with the neck, so I can pull this down confidently and pull this down as well. I have to bring down the neck layer and even resize. I'll also push this one a bit to the left. Then apply a radius with the radius widget. Now here's something to take note of when applying radius to an anchor point. You don't want to come back anymore to change any of these anchor points, because the moment you do that, your radius will not be the same anymore. As you can see, we've lost that widget. So even when we try to apply radius, we get different results entirely because a new corner has been created. So whenever you apply a radius like this and you realize you need to change or adjust something else, an anchor point around on that same shape, what you want to do is select both anchor points now and bring it back. Then make whatever changes you need to make before applying your radius again. It's a bit of a pain, but that's how it works. The next thing we're going to do is add a color. So I'm going to take a rectangle and just draw from here. I don't want to take it any way beyond because it's going to be in front of her neck, so I'll just place it somewhere here. I'll just take this part and snap it right there to the side of the neck layer, so we don't have to go behind it. So it gives the illusion that we are behind it. Then I'll set it to the color of her eyes and bring it down a shade. I'll duplicate the rectangle and just resize it. Then I'll use the free transform tool to shear it down. Right about there is fine. And I'll take it up a shade. I'm going to modify this anchor point and just bring this downwards a bit more. And that will serve as the color. Now I want to add a few lines here to show where her arms meet with the shoulders and the rest of the upper body. So I'll use the pen tool to simply click and click, just establish a line just like we've done before. Then I'll play with the line color, set that to the color of the torso and make it a bit deeper. Then I'll adjust the stroke properties, set that to 5 pixels. This wedge profile and rounded curves. So this is what we have right now. We're going to proceed into the next part to add in our finishing touches to help bring up the quality of the illustration. But if you want to stop here, you're fine. Now that I look at it, I kind of think the neck is a bit too long and rather thin. So I'll expand it right there, just like that, and push things back up a bit more. So I'll just select everything like this with the direct selection tool. I'll just select everything and push them up. I'm holding shift and up arrow key. So this is what we have right now. I'll adjust the colors as well to fit in with our changes. Now that we're in the final stages of this illustration, we need to do some cleanup and organization before we can proceed to add finishing touches. If you've made it this far into the tutorial, you have my thanks and congratulations. So far, we've been using the transform effect as a live mirroring tool and while it helps speed up our workflow, there's a little drawback in that we're unable to edit the left side of the illustration as you would the right. So we're going to need to fix that. Also, I noticed these layers right here, for example, the shape of the head is actually made up of a semicircle and a modified triangle. We don't want to have these extra shapes laying about. We will need to actually merge them all together to form just one clean shape for the face. And the same for other areas like the lips, the nose, and the torso. Right now we don't need the mirror effect anymore because we're not adding any more objects. So we'll go ahead and expand the appearance. It's important to understand that this is a point of no return. So the first thing you want to do is back up your file. Either you back up the save file, or you can go over here under the layers panel, create a new layer and call it backup. Pull it down here and hide it. Then I'll just take the face and the upper torso, hold the Alt key, click and drag and place those layers right in the backup layer. So now we have exact copies of the face and upper torso layers. So you can always come back to them in case you botch things later on. So I'll come back to the face layer, click on the appearance target icon right there. Then I'll go to object, expand appearance, and immediately I'm able to work on the left, but also that transform effect has been applied, so it goes away. I'll do the same with the upper torso layer, expand appearance. Now I'm going to open the face layer and notice we have another sub layer here called face as well. And when I expand it, I see we have two groups right here. One group for the right side of the face and another group for the left side of the face. I'm just going to hide this hair blend for now so we can focus on the face. So I'm going to select this first group right here. Presently both sides are in a group called face, so I'm going to right click and ungroup to separate them. So now we have two groups. I'm also going to select them both and actually select the first side. I'm also going to select one of them, ungroup. I'll select the other and also ungroup. Now this may seem contrary to what we're trying to achieve here, which is fewer layers and simpler objects, but it's going to get a whole lot simpler from this point. So I'll use the direct selection tool, and the first thing we're going to need to do is merge these four shapes that form the face so we can get just one whole shape for the face. So using the direct selection tool, I will just select this part, the next part, all four shapes. Then I'll go to the shape builder tool or Shift M on my keyboard. Then just click and drag along these selected shapes. It's not going to affect the other shapes because they weren't selected. Then I'll just release, and right away we have our shape. I can just click and drag it out here, and you can see it's a perfect shape for the face. This is something you can't really achieve using the pen tool. It's going to be a whole lot difficult and inaccurate. So that's that. I'll also do the same for the lips. I notice there are two separate shapes here that make up the lips, so I'll select them both. Same thing, use the shape builder tool, merge them together. Now I have it right here. I'll also do the same for the inner shapes that make up the separation for the lips. Shift M, merge. Right there. Now we have to select all shapes that make up the lips and group them together so we have fewer layers and a more organized set of shapes. But first I'm going to need to lock this base layer so we can easily select anything else. So I'll come over here, right here in the layers panel where it's selected, and click there to toggle the lock icon. Now I can confidently come over here using the lasso tool, just click and drag around to get the selection. Then I'll right click and group them together. So now we have them all in this one group. I'll just double click there and name it lips. And I'll pull it down here right on top the face, the base shape for the face. Now we'll go on to the next one, the nose. Now remember when we drew these things, they were actually parts, but right now they've been expanded to shapes of their own. So I'll come over here and just merge these two shapes together. They are no longer parts. Shift M and merge. I also find that I don't quite like this one anchor point there jutting out, so I'll select it and in the properties menu change that to smooth and pull it down holding the shift key for constraint. Maybe I'll push that up a bit. I'll also smooth this anchor point and we're fine. Then I'll just use the selection tool, select all the shapes that make up the nose. Now notice they are all far apart out here and it will be a pain to actually try to merge them, bring them all together. So just like before, I'll just right click and group, and I'll call the group nose. That's simple, and pull it down right above the lips. And now you notice these layers are quickly getting fewer and more understandable. We're going to do a similar thing for the right eye. So this time we don't need to merge anything because there are no shapes that actually meet in the middle. So I'll use the lasso tool and just draw around to cover the eye. So all the shapes that make up the eye are selected. So I'll right click and group. But here's the thing, it's all stored within layer 3 because some of those shapes were actually stored in layer 3. And I think it was the highlights, the shapes we use for the highlights. Remember, we have to push that up to layer 3 because we want to avoid the mirror effect. But that's not an issue. All we just need to do, you could either open the layer and then search for where it is and then pull it down to the face layer, or just ensure it's selected, and while it's selected, just click on that indicator there and bring it down. Just drag it right down to the face layer, and Illustrator knows that you're trying to actually reorganize the selected objects within layer 3. So now we have it back in the face layer. Notice even the selection color changes to red as well, which is the official color of face as it were. So I'm going to pull this down right over nose and call it right eye. And we'll do the exact same thing for the left side. There. Right click, group, and I'll just pull this down to face and call it left eye. And we're only left with the scarf and the folds that make up the scarf. So I'll select the two shapes that make up the scarf, then use the shape builder tool. Notice right away we see that there's an extra overlapping going on here, and that was because when drawing the shapes, for some reason I didn't snap them properly to the guideline in the middle right there. So that's why we have that overlapping going on there, but it's not a matter. I'll just drag across and merge them all into a simple shape. So this is what we have here. Well, notice we have some extra parts up there which we don't really need, so I'll just delete them. They have no consequence. Now I'm also going to select these folds right here along with the base shape of the scarf and group them together, and just pull this down to face, call it scarf. Okay, I'm just going to tweak this one point right here. So you can see the tweaking never really stops. Yeah, now that's perfect. Now we'll also do the same thing for the upper torso now that we're done with the face. And right away you can see it's all fewer layers and very easy to understand. We'll just call this face base. I'll also come over to the upper torso and merge these two shapes together. So I'll use the direct selection tool. First of all, ungroup them. So right click, ungroup. Before that, select each of these groups, right click and ungroup. Here, ungroup as well. Then we'll merge these two shapes together. So I'll use the selection tool as well, select them both, shape builder tool, merge. So that's down there. Then these lines that make up the arms, I'm just going to move this, holding the shift key, just move that to the left and this to the right, just increase the size of the arms. Then I'll select both parts. Now these are supposed to be shapes on their own because they've been expanded right now, but for some reason they are still in a group with no other shape. So I'll just right click there and ungroup to get rid of it. Ungroup. So now we have two simple shapes that are actually called parts here because they were originally parts when we drew them. Then I'll right click and group them. We'll also group all the shapes that make up the collar. And of course the neck is in a layer of its own. I think I'm just going to move that into the face, into the upper torso. And of course the neck is in a layer of its own, so we won't need to touch that. So far what we have here is the collar. I'll just call that collar. The arm lines. So arm lines, you know what that means already. And the base, I'll just call this base. So we have the upper torso, the face, the neck, and of course the hair blend right there. So I'll just keep that hidden for now. And so far everything is properly organized. Now we can go on to the last part of this tutorial to add in finishing touches like maybe freckles and shadows and highlights to the face, just to add a few finishing touches to the illustration, and it goes a long way to boost the quality, so you don't want to miss that part. With the layers and shapes properly organized, we can go on now to complete the illustration by adding finishing touches. Specifically, we'll be drawing in the shapes of highlights and shadows as they fall across the subject. We'll also add freckles to her face to make it more interesting. To apply the highlights and shadows, we'll be using clipping masks. Now, in case you are unfamiliar with how clipping masks work, I'll just show you briefly. All you need is at least two shapes, one to serve as our mask and another to serve as the target shape. I'll just color the target red. Now the color of the mask shape doesn't matter because when we apply the effect, it's all going to go away. And personally, I prefer working without the color, so it's easier to see what I'm doing. For the mask to work, you have to ensure these shapes overlap, and only the parts of the circle within this square will be visible when we apply the mask. And also bear in mind, the shape that serves as your mask must always be in front. So I'm going to arrange and bring to front. If you have the circle in front, Illustrator will assume the circle will be the mask. But in this case, we want the square to serve as the mask. Now I'll select them both, right click and make clipping mask. And right away you can see the effect already going. The best part of this effect is it's non-destructive and easily reversible. So all I need to do to reverse the effect is right click, release clipping mask. Or I could just double click to get into isolation mode and adjust the shapes how I want. So this is the principle we'll be using to draw in the highlights. That way the shapes of the highlights and shadows will not interfere with the overall shape of our subject. So I'm just going to come over to this layer and just name it H&S, so I know that's highlights and shadows. And I'll take the pen tool and begin drawing the shape of the highlights. In this case, I'm assuming there's a light hitting her from the right side, from this direction. So I'll just go over there and draw. Now it doesn't matter that we have the shape spilling out, we can easily fix that later. I'll also round out this area, and I'll set it to the color of her shirt. Now go to the appearance panel and set the blend mode to screen. I'll also do the same for the shape of the shadow. If there's a light coming from that direction, then we should have some shadows in this area as well. So I'll take the pen tool, just like before, and draw. I'll set the blend mode to multiply and also adjust this radius. Now we need to apply the mask to get rid of the extras outside. So we'll be using the shape of the torso right here as the clipping mask. I'll select the base, hold the Alt key, click and drag it into the highlights and shadows layer. Ensure that the mask is right above both shapes. Then select all three of them, right click and make clipping mask. And right away you can see the highlights and shadows are right there on the body without any extra distractions. You can always also come back here and adjust the shapes as I see fit. Now that that's done, I'm also going to apply the same effect to the shape of her face. So I'll take my pen tool and begin drawing. This will help lend to the depth of her facial features. I'm also going to place another curve here. Now this should simulate the depression right above the lips. You can always come back and try to get more accurate light shapes, but for the sake of this tutorial, this is all we're going to be working with. I'm also going to set this to skin color. Then I'll go to the opacity and set it to screen. I'll leave that there for now. Now we need to mask this, but notice we have a separate shape for both the scarf and the shape of the head. I'm just going to unlock that shape right here. Now you notice both shapes aren't exactly the same, so we have to take both of them and merge them to get our mask. So I'll select them both. First I'll begin with the face, the shape of the face. I'll hold the Alt key and pull that upwards to get a copy. Then for the scarf, it's in a group right now, so I'll go right into the group, select the path of the scarf, hold the Alt key as well, click and push that up. Then I'll select them both. Using the Pathfinder tool, I'll unite both shapes, so we have one single shape. Then I'll select the highlight, right click and make clipping mask. I'm also going to use the direct selection tool now and adjust the visibility of the clipping mask. I'll just drop the opacity to somewhere around 20%, so we have that subtle effect showing up right there. And so that's that for the shape of the face and the highlights for the face. And as you can see, it lends to the depth and doesn't just make things look completely flat. I'll also draw a shadow along this area, so I'll use the pen tool as usual. And just let it fall off there. This time I'll set the blend mode to multiply. Just gonna adjust this a bit. And I'll place it, since we already have the shape of the face as our mask already existing as a clip mask, I'll just take that and drop it in under the shape in the clip group, and right away it's part of the clipping mask. I'll also drop the opacity somewhere around 50% is fine. And this is what we have. It makes a whole lot of difference, even if it's subtle. Without highlights and shadows, with highlights and shadows. So you could go on to add more highlights and shadows as you see fit, but for now this is where I'll stop. The next thing I'm going to do is draw in freckles. So I'm just going to create a new layer and I'll call that freckles. This should help make the face more interesting. It doesn't just remain plain. We need some form of randomness to it. And I'll be using the brush tool. So if you don't have the brush panel open, just go to Window, Brushes. And we're going to create our own brush to serve as the brush for freckles. So I'll take an ellipse, set it to the color of her scarf, and just draw somewhere about 6 pixels is fine right there. Now it may seem really small, but this is what we'll be using. Now with the shape selected, under the brush panel, click New Brush and select Scatter Brush and click OK. Now you want to set these values here to random and the size down to 10%. Keep that at 100 for now. We'll also bring down the spacing to 10% and on this end 1000%, minus 1000 and 1000. We can always come back to adjust these settings as we see fit when we begin painting the freckles. So now we have our freckles done. We don't need that shape anymore. We can delete it. And I'll come here and select this brush and begin drawing. I'm just going to draw along these areas. And now this is what we have. You can always come back to adjust these dots by adjusting the path. Get rid of a few anchor points here that I find rather troublesome. So now it's just a matter of positioning these things to where they are able to appear naturally. Right, you can't have freckles in the eyes, that's just gross. Also, if you find that it's a lot difficult to adjust the position of these freckles, you could come back to the brush settings, set it to preview and adjust some of these values. So I'm just going to pull back the scatter here and the spacing as well. I also reduce the size of the brush over here, the maximum size. And click OK. Then we can go back to adjust the brush. Now you can see, as you can see, there's a whole lot of control that we lack in making these freckles work. So what I'm going to do is expand the brush. So I'll just select the path right here, go to Object, Expand Appearance. So now we have all of them as individual shapes. Now we can simply select the areas we don't want them appearing and delete. So with the group selected, I'll just double click to get into isolation mode. Always remember to click with the selection tool to get into isolation mode. So now we can only work with each of these dots within the group. Then I'll use the lasso tool and just select the brushes in this area. Hold the shift key and just add those dots there and delete. We'll also do the same for this area. We don't need freckles there. It just adds a little bit of randomness to the shape. Remember, so far we've worked with the mirror tool, so everything is just simply a reflection of the other side. But when we apply these little effects like the highlights on the face and then the freckles, it just adds a little something to everything. I'm also going to come over here and see if we can adjust the blend mode of these shapes. Let's see what multiply does. Okay, multiply looks really good. Then I'll adjust the opacity, set that to 50%. So that's fine. Then I'll bring back the shape of the hair so we can have an overall look at what we've done so far. So now I'll just dock the brush panel right here, and this is what we have for the Afro Girl illustration. If you've made it up to this point, well, you have the biggest congratulations, and I'd love to see what you're able to come up with in the course of this tutorial. I find out that it doesn't matter how many times you draw these, you never get the exact same result. So every result is unique. At least the freckles are unique. Thanks for watching.